Hello and welcome to It'll Be Alright in the 90s, the podcast with the goriest fatalities of all the nostalgia-based podcasts. I'm your host, Alex Greenwood, and joining me is my co-host, Stu Jocelyn. How are you, Stu?
Finish him! Finish him! Very good, thanks, mate. Great to be back with you. And looking forward to this topic tonight. I've really had to look hard in the annals to pick what I'm going to mention for this one, but I think they're worth mentioning all the same. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
Yes, we will be talking about the games of 1993 later. But before that, tonight's episode is sponsored by Team 17. So head down to the game section of your local branch of Boots or WH Smiths and quote the code ALLRIGHT90s to get 10% off the full range of Team 17 titles, which includes Super Frog, Alien Breed 3D, Worms, and Arcade Pool. So take your pick from some of the most exciting games currently on sale, courtesy of our sponsor this week, Team 17.
Wow, lovely to have a game studio on board. Worms is an absolute 90s classic, of course, so I'll be straight down there to take advantage of that offer.
Yeah, it's a good one, isn't it? Do you remember when Boots and Smiths used to sell computer games?
I certainly do. I remember it being a staple of their Christmas catalogues. One
Mm-hmm.
of which I think we had definitely a W.H. Smith, if not a Boots catalogue. I think Mark from Glasgow might have sent some down for us in the
Yeah.
past that I've looked at, and there were video games in there. So, yeah, very, very precious memories of that. And records, of course, tape CDs,
Yeah.
which neither sell anymore. Just you mentioned Boots, I've just remembered something from the weekend. I was in the town centre, just, doing a bit of wandering about, as I like to do. And a man stopped me outside Boots and asked me where the nearest branch of Boots was. And I don't know if he was messing around with me, but I had to say, well, it's here, mate.
And what was his reaction?
Oh, yes, thank you very much, thank you. So the more I think about it, the more I think he might have just seen me as an easy mark for some wheezes and japes. But yeah, that was a bit of a strange one.
Or maybe he just wanted an excuse to come and talk to the presenter of It'll Be Alright in the 90s.
Possibly, yeah, and then he was going in to take advantage of the Team 17 offer.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. Time now for the bulletin board, and I think we've got quite a bulging post bag today, haven't we, Stu?
We certainly do, yes. One of our previous What's the Most 90s has really captured the imagination of the listeners, and that's what we love. We've got plenty of correspondence on that. First of all, though, a couple of things from me. We were hoping to be joined by resident pop expert of the pod, Diamond Joe Barter, for a record tonight. We are hoping to get him on soon to talk about some more 90s music, but he was unavailable this evening because he's dedicating his week to Christopher Nolan season at his local IMAX cinema. So I just wanted to give Diamond Joe a shout out. That's some good stuff from him.
Yeah, good on you, Joe. Good cinephile.
Absolutely, yeah, more power to your elbow. And the other thing is that I was sat in traffic on the way home this afternoon, and I pulled up behind a lovely cream Mercedes on an F plate, and I immediately thought of you because this is something that's right in the Cars Your Parents Owned wheelhouse, if we are allowed to cross-pollinate creative projects here.
Of course, yeah.
But what grabbed my attention most was the rear registration plate, because it had the dealer printed on the registration plate as part of it, of course, at the bottom. Dick Lovett, before Lovett Dick Shoe. Hello,
Yeah.
Max. And also the telephone number of the dealer, which began 0793.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's something that we've discussed on the podcast before about the one being added to area codes sometime in the 90s.
Yeah.
And whenever I see things like that registration plate or something that has maybe an 0249, which is my area code, was my area code, it's 01249 now, but something like that, missing that one, really does give you a Proustian 90s rush. And I had that this afternoon, just sat in some traffic with an old Mercedes. So I just wanted to bring that to the table.
Yeah, that's a good point. We haven't talked about that at all, have we? The added one and why they did that. But it's something that we should dig into. Yeah, maybe bring to a future bulletin board.
It's definitely worth some research. It was well within the 90s, and I remember it happening. It's one of the things that I do remember taking place. So, we will look into the big area code change for you and bring you that news as soon as we can get it.
A couple of quick things from me before we get into the post bag. First is, well, speaking of correspondence, I realized last week that our email address wasn't actually on our link tree. So every time I'm saying get in contact on using our link tree, you'll find our email address there. You wouldn't have found it there because for some reason it wasn't on there. I have now added it. If you want to email us, you will now find the email address in our link tree. I won't read it out now, but that's where you can find it.
I don't think it's going to have made an awful lot of difference that we didn't have it available.
Well, no, we'll find out, I suppose, in the coming months. But speaking of which, I also want to remind everyone of our ongoing competition to send in your most nostalgic 90s photograph, please, because that is something we really want to hear from you about. So get in touch using our email address for that competition.
I know our official 90s diarist and very good friend of the pod, Teresa Stenson, is currently rifling through her archives for some entries to that competition. And I wanted to give Teresa a mention on this episode because I was lucky enough to receive in the post this afternoon a lovely little package of zines, a couple of her most recent creations, and one which isn't even on her Etsy store yet. I am privileged to be the first of her customers who's ever read it. It's really, really great. It's no context quotes from her 90s teenage diaries, which we're obviously a big fan of on this podcast. By the time you hear this episode, it will be available through her Etsy store. So I fully, fully recommend that you get a hold of that and support Teresa by buying that through her Etsy store.
It's getting to the point now where we should be expecting some sponsorship money from Teresa, I think. The amount of free publicity we're giving
Hmm.
her on this podcast.
That's an interesting point, yes. And considering what we're going through with Jimmy's crickets at the moment, we do need another source of pod income or some way of getting our name out there in return. So yeah, maybe that's something that we need to look into with her.
Yeah, I think so. Let's put Jeff on it.
Yeah, definitely.
Teresa, expect a call from Jeff.
It'll come up as an unknown number from the only remaining working phone box in the Wessex region.
Right, shall we get into the correspondence then, Stu?
I think we should. And yeah, there's one area that we really should kick off with, isn't there?
I think there is. Yeah, absolutely set the phone lines a buzzing. This one, didn't it?
Yep, I don't think we've ever had as many comments on any subject that we've ever posted on our socials about. So this is unprecedented.
It is absolutely unprecedented. An advance warning: if we do miss out your comment, it's only through our ineptitude. It's not because we didn't want to read it out. So please do forgive us if we miss them out, but we will try and read them all out now. Let's start with friend of the pod, Lay, who says, I can still smell Spice Girls impulse inside my brain. Charlie and So question mark were also big in the game, although I can't remember which specific sense, and I can't remember what they actually smell like. Dreadful, I imagine. So do you remember Charlie or So? So that struck a chord in my mind, I
Mm.
think, but Charlie, I'm not sure about.
Oh, I can picture the bottle of Charlie, definitely. I can see the logo in that font. Yeah. I'm not sure I ever smelled either of them, but yeah, I definitely remember that logo.
Okay, yeah, I think actually Charlie might come up again later, but
hmm
who have you got a message from there?
Well, can I bring you a Spice Girls impulse sighting in the wild
Oh yes,
from my
definitely.
own recent life and times?
Hmm.
Where do you think locally I might have been over the past few days where I would have spotted a Spice Girls impulse can in the wild?
It wasn't on the Isle of Wight, was it?
No, I'm thinking of a specific place within my local area.
Um,
And while you're thinking, have a think about what's different about me since we last spoke.
oh, I see. Yes, you must have been to see the official barber of the pod, Will Hodgson. Did
I
they have
certainly
some?
did.
Did they have some in the salon?
I had a lovely time in Will's chair, as I always do, and they had some hiding away on one of their display shelves in the salon.
Oh, awesome! That's great to know that there is still some in the local area.
They actually left me in charge of the shop for a little while they popped out to get a sandwich. I was tempted to take it down and just see if it still sprayed and if there was anything in there, but I didn't want to do anything that might endanger
Uh,
myself or my surroundings.
yeah, no, fair enough. With those compressed aerosols, you don't want to be too careful, do you?
Indeed, indeed. I have a message here from our ideas man, Adam J. Fisher, who simply says, I'd love to smell Inca again. It gets my vote.
Yeah, spot on. Absolutely, one of the big ones, wasn't it? Then Bubblegum Zine Archive says, I still think about Impulse Zen regularly. I wish they'd bring that back. So a different version of Impulse there to the Spice Girls one, but another big 90s one for sure.
Impulse has really got a big market share of our listeners' memory so far, hasn't it? Impulse and Lynx,
Yeah,
definitely two of the big players here.
yeah,
Neil Pithouse says, Aramis was my go-to for a long time. Think I used to get it in the smelly zone in Debenhams where all the fragrance and beauty brands were. Now I think we're taking a step up here, aren't we? I think
yeah.
Aramis must be a an aftershave perfume type thing. But a lovely mention of the smelly zone in Debenhams there. Was that next to the talking tree, do you think?
I think it was, yeah, just second left after the talking tree. You got
Mm.
into the smelly zone. Yeah, yeah.
Talking tree often found itself giving directions to the smelly zone.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Then Laura Jane Collins says, Just 17 magazine brought a few out in conjunction with Impulse. My parents hated it because they could still smell it on my clothes after they had been washed. I would absolutely still wear it now because it was beaut.
Wow, a fragrance magazine crossover.
Yeah, that's really nice, isn't it? The combination of Just 17 and Impulse fragrance. That's spot on.
I'd have to say that is the memory so far. That is the most 90s for me.
Yeah, yeah.
For sure, bringing together two bastions of 90s fashion ephemera, just 17 and Impulse. Superb.
Yeah, yeah.
Second mention of the episode so far for our very good friend Teresa, who says, I've just been listening to this segment in your latest episode, and I think you needed to divide the question into one, body sprays, and two, perfumes and aftershaves. There are just too many. Also, even a subsection of the fragrances your parents and other adults wore. Brute, Old Spice, Charlie all spring to mind for those. Lynx and Impulse for us at school. Then CK1 was huge around the later part of the decade. I had that and I felt very grown up.
Excellent. Yeah. Old Spice and Brute, definitely. Yeah. I seem to remember Old Spice being old even in the 90s, though. It was like an old thing.
Mm.
Maybe just partly because the name was old, but I think that and Brill Cream were sort of the things that old people used. Obviously, then Brill Cream had a resurrection because of David Beckham, but Old Spice, yeah. I wonder if you can still buy Old Spice. You must be able to.
I regularly get Old Spice gift sets for Christmas off of Glyn
Okay.
regularly, so yes, you can.
Okay. Okay. Another message on our Instagram here from Channel Nem, friend of the pod. He says Charlie Red for the lasses and Lynx Africa for the lads. Brackets bring roll on for PE as if you bring spray. Everyone in inverted commas borrows it and you end up with an empty can. So two classics there. Another mention for Charlie and Lynx Africa. Need we say any more on that? And then finally on this topic from Legend of the Pod, Hannah Kelly, she says another scent that comes to mind is Body Shop Tangerine, although this was later corrected with Teresa's help. That we think actually it was Body Shop Satsuma rather than Tangerine, but very, very popular scent in the Body Shop at that time. And Teresa also says Dewberry, White Musk, and the Peach one. From the Body Shop. So yeah, Body Shop obviously big on smells in the 90s. One of the best sources of smells alongside the Debenham Smelly Zone would have been the Body Shop, of course.
Massive competitors on the high street, Body
Mhm.
Shop and Debenham Smelly Zone. All
Yes.
of this leads to calls for us to produce a special full episode on smells of the 90s, where we not only cover these sorts of things, but also things like PE lessons, chip pans, that sort of thing.
Yes, that would be good. Rest assured, we will at least be doing a What's the Most 90s smell separate from fragrances. We intentionally separated those two out because we knew there'd be so many. So there will be more smell content coming from this podcast very soon.
I'm not sure we ever thought that when we did What's the Most 90s Fragrance, it would ever blow up in this way, but we're very, very grateful that it has. And you've asked for it, so there's going to be more scent content coming your way very soon.
Moving on to other topics in our post bag, coming back to Neil actually from Channel M, he says in our YouTube comments, the most 90s live music event would mostly be picked out as either Stone Roses at Spike Island or Oasis Nebworth at the height of Britpop. Obviously, that's something we reference in our chat about the most 90s music event or gig. But then he would pick Glastonbury 1995, headlined by The Cure on Friday, Pulp on Saturday, and Oasis on Sunday. You also had The Prodigy, The Shaman, and Elastica headlining the second stage. I mean, of course, that's such a 90s lineup, right in the middle of the decade, the same year as the Mile End Blur gig that I chose. So, yeah, really good choice there, Neil. Absolutely love that as a suggestion for the most 90s music event. And then on the topic of the UK sitcoms that we talked about a few episodes back, he says he loved both the Thin Blue Line and the Detectives. You mentioned that John Pickard's brother played Tony in Hollyoaks. Well, his sister in 2.4 Children, Claire Buckfield, her actual real life twin sister, Julie Buckfield, played Tony's girlfriend during the early years of Hollyoaks. Also, Claire Buckfield famously dated Declan Donnelly during the second half of the 90s. So there's a whole sort of family of, or multiple families of 90s actors going on there.
It's
Which is
wheels within
great.
wheels when it comes to 90s sitcoms and soaps.
It is, yeah. And then finally, he says, I would say the upper hand was aimed more at females and males with the will they, won't they storyline. And also the McCann brothers were seen as eye candy during the 90s. So yeah, that was your choice, obviously, the upper hand,
Hmm.
Stu.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly very sorry that Paul McGann never got to do any more than one feature-length episode as Doctor Who back in 1996.
You're a big McGann apologist, aren't you?
Very much so, very much so.
And then our final bit of correspondence is also from Legend of the Pod Hannah Kelly on a different topic. And she says, I've just listened to your summer holidays episode and very much enjoyed it. I thought of some other memories you're welcome to read out if you'd like. I spent a lot of time with my cousin Adam. We played a lot of the X-Files computer game until we completed it. We also made a Friends board game from scratch before one even existed in the shops. We also played the board game Atmosphere, one of those where you have a video element to the gameplay. And for daytime TV, we watched Supermarket Sweep and Quantum Leap. So some assorted 90s summer holiday memories there. Very impressive, though, that you, well, completed the X-Files computer game and also that you made your very own Friends board game before one actually existed in the
Mm.
shops.
Yeah, you should have patented that as soon as you'd come up with it. What is it? You got to write the idea down and then send it to yourself by registered post, and then that counts as
Oh, yeah.
copyright, patent, something like that. Or is that just an urban myth? But anyway, that's what they should have done.
Yeah. God, you'd have made an absolute killing if you'd registered the copyright on the Friends board game. Imagine. Hannah, if you remember, do let us know what the rules
Mm.
and the mechanics of the board game were, because it's just the idea of a Friends board game at all is quite unusual. But the fact that you made one up yourself, I would love to know how it worked.
Yeah, moving pieces, cards, anything you had to design, definitely fill us in on that.
There will be no What's the Most 90s this week because we're having a week off from that. And also because we're basically gathering our thoughts after the What's the Most 90s fragrance
Mm.
sort of hullabaloo.
That
So
really
it,
took it out of us, yeah.
it did, yeah. We're exhausted. So we're going to have a quick round of anecdote roulette and also a very quick quiz. So, Stu, can we have an anecdote, please?
Certainly. Well, let me give you a few of the most recent titles that are on the list, and you can pick out which one you like. I've got here The Roast Dinner, The Inflatable Chair, The Hot Air Balloon, Disco Theft, or Caution Sharks. Which of those would you like?
I feel like the roast dinner's been on there for a while, so that's probably due to a reading.
Okay. First time I ever heard my mum swear.
Hmm.
This is the roast dinner story, and I think it ties in with This Morning with Richard Not Judy, which I mentioned as part of my chat on What's the Most 90s Duo in
Hmm.
our USA 94 episode. Sunday dinner at home at lunchtime, and This Morning with Richard Not Judy must have been on the TV. We didn't have a TV in the kitchen at the time, which is where we eat in the Joslin household, and I think I'd got a special dispensation to take my dinner into the living room and eat it there so I could watch the show. And unfortunately, catastrophically, as I was carrying my dinner on the tray through to the living room, I tripped on something that was on the floor, or I tripped over myself, and there were gravy and roast potatoes everywhere, gravy on the ceiling, roast potatoes splattered over the walls. It looked like an absolute war zone. It really did. And yeah, my mum came in, and it was the first time I'd ever heard her use the F word,
Oh,
because I'd
good
because I'd
Lord.
splattered my roast dinner all over the living room. The only thing I really remember in the aftermath is that my parents then had to each give me some of their dinner to make up my dinner because my dinner
Yeah,
had obviously gone for a Burton.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, that's really all I remember about it. But definitely something, a shocking incident, which from the 90s, which has stuck in my mind all these years. But the first time I heard my mum swear to that extent because I'd thrown my roast dinner across the room by accident.
That is one of the worst things you can do in life, isn't it? Is spill your dinner as you're preparing to eat it because
Hmm.
you're at your most hungry. You've also relaxed. You think, well, I've made the food and now I can enjoy it, and then that happens, and it's compounded obviously by the fact you have to decide whether you clear it up now or you know go back to whatever food you've got left or whatever. So, and the worst thing for your parents there is that they had to give up some of their dinner as well. So
Hmm.
they had a clear up operation and they had less food.
Well,
So
it would have been
awful.
the last thing on my parents' mind that I didn't have any dinner. That would have been sorted out as an afterthought. It definitely would have been DEFCON 1. Let's get this cleaned up, first of all.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a
Do,
cream settee at the time as well, I seem to recall.
oh, they didn't still have the plastic cover on it then.
No, I'm afraid not. No, no, that had gone. Yeah.
Are there any marks that still remain?
I think the room has been decorated many times over since then. I reckon this was 1998 or 1999. So if the front room at the Joslin household still had the same decor as it did back then, I think that we might have some problems. So yeah, I think it's all okay now. But yeah, the memory remains. That's all. A
Yeah,
stain on my psyche that will forever remain.
staying on your reputation.
Well, obviously, since then, I've become the safest hands in Pewsham, Wolverhampton goalkeeper, and all that. So, obviously, it's an incident that sticks in my mind and drives me on to be better in my sporting career.
Yeah, every great goalkeeper can trace their story back to a moment of a spilled dinner, I'm sure.
Well, this is it. Nobody would have remembered if I'd taken my dinner in that room and just eaten it normally and nothing had happened. But everybody remembers when an error's made.
Absolutely true. Right, let's do a quiz.
Must we? I really don't have a great track record on these recently.
No, but that's what makes it interesting. People are listening because they want to hear you vindicated.
Okay, well, let's have it then. I'll see what I can do.
Right. I think people also love the sort of background ambience of me getting the box out. Um, right. So as usual, the categories are fashion and trends, which we call the memorial Nelson Mandela round. Um, film and music. So what would you like to go through first?
I'd like them in that order, please. I think I always like to try and do the fashion and trends one first,
Okay.
because then I know if I get that right, I've got half a chance on film
Yeah.
and music.
Yeah.
So
No, I think
might be
that's
on for
wise.
the three for. So yeah, let's give it a go.
Um, I mean, you've got an absolute gimme here, but I've got to read it out. I've got to read out what's on the card. So, created in the 90s, which handheld digital pet device started a craze among children?
Yeah, you're right. That's it's a bit of a gimme. It's the Tamagotchi, of course.
It
Don't
is.
tell me it's Furby. It's Tamagotchi.
It is the Tamagotchi.
Okay, good, good.
Right,
Right, we're on.
he's 1 for 1, 100%. Now films. He can do films, but there's a lot of blind spots for
Mm.
old Jaws. Okay, potentially gettable. I'm not sure for you. Okay, I'm not sure if this is gettable, but I think you've got
Oh,
a
okay.
chance.
So you've downgraded it from potentially gettable to not sure if it's gettable. Why don't you just tell me I've got no chance?
I downgraded it because I was going to edit out the stumble I made when I read it out when I said that the first time, and now you've ruined that, so I can't edit it out.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Um, right. The question is, which actor plays Robert De Niro's psychiatrist in Analyze This?
Oh, yeah, gettable if I'd ever seen it. Um, Let me take a wild stab because I've been reading a book recently that has a lot of references to this actor. And while I'm here, Yardsticks for Failure by Ivo Graham is one of my reads of the year so far. So if you're into your current British comedy, definitely pick that up. I will have a stab at Philip Seymour Hoffman.
It's a good guess, but it's actually Billy Crystal.
Ah, okay. Well, I can still salvage things with 2 out of 3.
You can.
And I've got music to go, which I should have a bit of a better chance on, unless you tell me otherwise.
This one, I mean, you're good at music, so we'll see. Prince and his band, The New Power Generation, released an album in 1991. What was it called?
Oh, 91. So Purple Rain was obviously a long time before that. I'm not sure it was a new power generation either. Um, the only one I know for sure he released around that time was the soundtrack for a Batman movie, so I'm gonna have to go with that. But I
It,
love Prince, so I really should know.
I'm afraid it wasn't that. It was Diamonds and Pearls.
Ah, see, of course, like you know that that's a song, but don't know if
Hmm.
that's the title of the album. That's the only defense I've really got there. Okay, one out of
Well,
three. Work to do.
yeah, we go again. Time now to get on with the main topic, which is the computer games of 1993. Now, Stu, I did see somewhere when I was researching this episode, somewhere online, there was a quote that said that 1993 might have been the best year for video games in history. We'll obviously talk about that later, but for you personally, where were you at with your gaming life in 1993?
Not very far in, still very young in 1993. I think we might have had a Mega Drive by then. Glyn might have introduced one of those to the household, but probably too young to really play it and know what I was doing. Where I'm coming from with games in 1993 is stuff that I picked up a few years later once I got more familiar with consoles and have been playing for a while, and then went back to get some of these games which maybe had become a little bit more available and cheaper by then. So that's where I've gone with my picks. But as you're slightly older than me, I presume this will be smack bang in the middle of Amiga Mania.
It was, yeah. I was very much deep in the Amiga landscape at this point. Same as you, though. Some of the games I played in later years when we got them subsequent to their release date, but I was playing games at this point, and it would have been on the Amiga, maybe a 600 or a 500. I'm not sure. It would have been pre 1200. I know that. But yeah, all my choices are Amiga games. We'll get to that shortly. But this is, of course, a landscape where the Mega Drive was the highest selling console in Europe. Then there was the SNES, the Game Gear, the Game Boy, the Master System, and the PC were all out there. So there was a range of different options. There were other ones as well, like that obscure Panasonic one I can't remember the name of. So there were things to be playing your games on, but for me it was definitely Amiga. As usual, we have each picked three games to talk about, and I think Stu, let's start with you.
Okay, well, I've gone for a Mega Drive game, and I've gone for a game that's simply known as Pele. Have you got any
Okay.
idea what I'm talking about here?
No, I've not heard of this. Tell me more.
Okay, so this comes from my period of, and I've mentioned this on the podcast many times, going into whatever branch of Pink Planet Games Exchange we were nearest to on a Saturday morning, wherever we'd gone shopping, and spending my meager pocket money on games that were available to me for a bargain price. And Pele was one of those for the Mega Drive. It actually came normally, if I was buying pocket money games, it would only be the cartridge, or maybe it'd come in a box with no instructions. That there'd be something that meant that it was being sold off cheaper by the shop. But this one, I seem to remember, had the box, the manual, and it was really cheap, which must, of course, point to the fact that it was a really bad game that nobody wanted. Um, I don't think I played it that much. I seem to remember on the Mega Drive, particularly. I seem to remember on the Mega Drive in particular, until I got hold of FIFA 97, which I was able to play and really enjoy. First game that I made up, sort of customized teams on and everything. But I found games like Pele and European Club Soccer, which I've spoken about as well, really hard. Like I couldn't score goals. I could barely pass the ball to another player. It was really really difficult. And looking into Pele, it's got that famous picture of him. I think he's in Jairzinho's arms. It's that picture of
Hmm.
him in the 1970 Cup final when
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
got his fist raised in the 1970 World Cup final when he's scored then. Did he score in the cup? Was it the semi-final or the final? No, it
Well,
was
he,
the final.
well, he was celebrating something, wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And this comes from a long line of basically video game endorsements from either former footballers or current footballers. So I remember picking up another one, again, no instructions, but had the box that Ryan Giggs had endorsed.
Hmm.
And this one was really bad. The only thing I really remember about it is having the ball with your goalkeeper and then pressing the ball to punt the ball long, and all it would do was sail straight into the other goalkeeper's arms.
Yeah.
It would bypass the entire players, all the rest of the pitch, bypass everyone, go straight into the goalkeeper's arms, and then the other goalkeeper would punt it back to you, and you could get stuck in a loop, really. I've got an extract from a review here that Meme Machines Sega conducted on the Pele game. They called it an affront to the good name of soccer and the good name of Pele. They derided the ropey controls and difficult goalkeepers, dismissed the music as nauseating Hammond organ, and described the crowd sounds as the spectators at a St. Trinian's hockey match. And if you were to look up a long play of the game on YouTube, as I have in the run up to this episode, you would be in complete agreement with that review. So it's strange to be saying this for a Video Games of 1993 episode, but the first one I've picked is a game that I never played very much, that wasn't really good when I did play it, but I have a memory of playing this game from 1993, and of course it's linked to the football legend that is Pele, so I still think worthy of a mention.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. It's not something I've ever heard of. Was it a game you could play two player? Was like a multiplayer game, or did you have to play against a computer?
I believe it was a multiplayer game, but Glyn was never much one for playing games two player with me. It
Mm.
was always very much a solo activity when I was on the Mega Drive. So yeah, I just don't remember. I mean, I remember it happening on the Game Boy as well, with games like the USA '94 Game Boy game was just useless. Couldn't do anything with it. Italia '90, the classic Mega Drive football game, rubbish at
Yeah.
it. Just really wasn't that good at it until FIFA '97 came along. Maybe when it had improved to a point where they could make it a bit more easier for the player and have sort of difficulty levels and things like that. Was I then only able to really get into it? So
Yeah. Yeah. This is in the era. I'm guessing this was a top-down football game.
absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, this was the era for Kickoff 2 and sensible soccer for me at least. And those sort of games were much more challenging than I think the 3D games that we got later. And I guess it is hard to design a game where the camera is looking straight down, and how do you make that playable without being
Mm.
too easy? And yeah, I always found Kickoff 2 really hard to play. And scoring goals was a huge achievement on that game. So I can imagine Pele being similar. And that wasn't even a good one either. So yeah, nice to give it a mention.
Pele himself had some input on the game's design, so it's partly his fault. And also, a sequel was released in 1994, Pele 2 World Tournament Soccer, which unfortunately I never got to play. So maybe that's one to look up for the future.
I wonder what input Pele had on that game. I mean, what could he have possibly done or said?
I really don't know. Let's make it really difficult. And
Yeah. I think he probably came in and said, "Can I be at the picture on the front cover, please?" And they said yes, and then he left. I reckon that's what it was.
that's probably, yeah, stick my name and picture on the cover, and yeah, the rest you can do what you like with.
Yeah. Now where's my money?
Okay, that's more than enough of that. What is your first Amiga choice for your video games of '93 list?
Well, I'm starting at the other end of the spectrum because I'm talking about Cannon Fodder. Now, this was released on the Amiga in 1993, right at the end of the year in December for the Christmas market. It was then later ported to the SNES, the Atari, the Mega Drive, the Jaguar in I think in subsequent years. But I think it started out as an Amiga game developed by Sensible Software, who obviously made Sensible Soccer and were something of a legend, I think, in this era of gaming. So this is a military shooting game or a run and gun game, as I've heard them refer to. So the camera is top down because it's like Sensible Soccer. Um, and you sort of control a squad of troops and you point and click them around. You kill your enemies, you blow up buildings, and that's sort of largely how it is. It's set in the jungle, and there's a snowy level, and then maybe a desert level as well. So it looks really good. It's got a great graphic design. One interesting thing about it in terms of the playability is that one bullet kills. I think definitely for your enemies, and I think for you as well. So that's quite unusual for an arcade game. Even now, you don't get that. So it did mean you had to be, strategic and be careful and plan what you were going to do. And that was one thing I liked about it. Um, but it was a real mix of kind of dark humor with this game and also a kind of earnest anti-war message, which made it quite interesting and actually quite controversial at the time. I know the Daily Star had a real campaign against it. They hated the fact that they'd used a poppy as the cover image, which was later changed, but there was a lot of fuss from the Royal British Legion and some of the other tabloids because of this mix of humor. Like, can you mix humor and war? But that mix was something that I actually quite liked. So one of the things that made it special for me was the fact that every troop in the game had a unique name. So you would start a mission with, say, 4 or 5 troops. They'd all have different names. And then maybe you lose 2 or 3, they would get killed in the game, in the mission. And you'd get to the end of the mission, and then it would scroll, play this sort of sad music, and it would scroll the list of the characters who've been killed. And then the surviving characters would get a promotion and they'd go up in rank, and it would show you what rank they were. And then for the next mission, you'd have the 2 surviving ones would still be there. Then you'd have 3 new troops, and they'd be, private. So they'd start back at the beginning of the ranks. So they have new names. And then at the there's the sort of start screen in between each mission. There was this image of a hill, and there'd be gravestones on it. So every time you lost a troop, there'd be a new grave on that hill.
Mhm.
And so it kind of created this sense of like you would get attached to the troops basically, even though there's like about 20 pixels per person and it's just a name. but there was something about that design and that development choice that meant you got attached to these characters, and you would try and keep people alive as long as possible. And if you had a couple of troops who completed 10 missions or something, they'd be, I don't know what the ranks are, no good, like a brigadier or something, and you'd really then want them to survive. And if they didn't survive, it would be a bit of a wrench. So I think that being able to create an emotional connection with, as I say, 20 pixels on a screen, I think was really impressive for this level of game, for this era. And it's probably something that you get much more now with things like Red Dead Redemption and The Last of Us. You really are emotionally invested to those characters, and I think maybe Cannon Fodder was one of the places where this started. Certainly was for me as an individual gamer, and I think that's one of the reasons why I loved it, and I did love it. This is probably still in my top 5 list of games of all time. Like, this is a real all-timer for me, and I'm glad that we did Games of '93 because it's allowing me to talk about it. But there you go. That's my long soliloquy about how great how great Cannon Fodder was.
Well, what can I possibly add to that? I know you've spoken passionately about Cannon Fodder on this podcast before, and I know how highly regarded it is by the gaming community at large. So yeah, very worthy of a place here, and definitely if it's in your top 5 games of all time. I mean, to have a computer game that's over 30 years old still in your top 5 of all time, knowing you to be as big a gamer as you are, that's a real accolade for it.
Mm. Yeah, I think so. I think so. Never been so much fun. 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 Go up to your brother, kill him with your gun, leave him lying in his uniform, dying in the sun. Right, what's your second choice?
I'm going for another cartridge-only purchase. I think this one might even have been like 99p or something like that, something mad, maybe from a car boot sale. I've gone for the Incredible Crash Dummies.
Okay, is this a tie-in with the toy?
It certainly is a toy, the cartoon, neither of which I ever had or watched, but I seem to remember the Crash Dummies being a brief obsession, and I definitely had a couple of issues of a comic that was based around Incredible Crash Dummies, but I couldn't get access to any of the other things, so the comic was basically all I could have. I remember getting a new wardrobe put in my bedroom in my parents' old house, and that the Crash Test Dummies comic was the first thing that I put into this wardrobe, reverently placed it in there. Just so finally I've got somewhere to put my comic. So there you go, that's what I did with that. And I'm going straight to eBay after this record to see if I can find said comic. I would have picked this up just as a cartridge-only purchase, I think. And you'll have to forgive me here, it is unclear when the Game Boy version of this game actually came out. On the Wikipedia entry for the Incredible Crash Dummies video game, it does say that between 1992 and 1994 there were 3 different video games and 2 different storylines that were produced and made for the Incredible Crash Dummies video game. So I've gone with the Game Boy one being a 1993 release, I think. To all intents and purposes, that's what I found out. So hopefully I'm not giving any misinformation here. And as I remember it, the game is based upon 2 of the Crash Test Dummies saving money for like a vacation, and they're having to do this stunt work in order to save enough money to go on vacation. Holiday. Sorry, I shouldn't be saying vacation. This I'll correct myself there immediately. And it's one of these games where I didn't get very far. I've had another look on YouTube at somebody playing it through. I remember the first 3 levels. There was jumping off a building and then going through like sort of various canopies. You could bounce off the canopies if you positioned the body in a certain way, and then you could break through them if you then went head down, and you could break through the canopy. There were sort of fires in windows that you had to avoid and things like that, and then you had to get to the bottom in as spectacular a way as you could. Then the next one, there was a bit of stunt driving, and then finally there was slalom skiing. They were the first 3 levels of the game. I've had a look onwards in the YouTube video, and I don't recall any of the other levels, so I think it was one that I was only able to play up to a certain extent. But still one that I really remember enjoy playing as far as I could. And when you get a chance to listen to it, the theme music is a proper earworm as well. But it's a proper old school black and white Game Boy game from the time that I really enjoyed. And it links to something as well, which was a brief fad. Crash Dummies as a toy, as a cartoon, never really hit the heights of, say, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. So I wanted to take this opportunity to put some respect on the incredible Crash Dummies name as well as a
Mm.
brief obsession of mine in the early 90s.
Fantastic. Yeah. The local 90s and 80s retro shop around the corner from me, shout out to Retro Bristol, has a lot of Crash Dummy toys. So if you're ever in the market for any of those toys, then that is the place to go in the Wessex region. I myself only had some knockoff, equivalent of
Hmm.
the Crash Dummy toys, which was a lot of fun. But this game sounds really interesting. Actually, that's kind of a unique premise for a game and style of game. Was it like anything else you played? Would you compare it to anything else?
No, I don't think so. It was certainly the first thing where you were like saving money towards a target, I suppose. I don't know if there's any other really, I mean, Grand Theft Auto these days. Obviously, you have to save money
Hmm.
to buy things and maybe unlock certain missions, but it's been a long time since I played that as well. So, yeah, it was actually, now you mention it, it was quite unique in that way. I don't think there was any other game that was really sort of brought out in that way.
Well, I'm going to attempt to not talk for quite as long about my second choice, although I do also love this game. It's The Settlers, developed by Blue Byte in Germany, a rare German computer game, and released in the UK in November 1993, so the month before Cannon Fodder. A couple of great games in quick succession there for the Amiga players. Um, so this was a city building strategy game along the lines of SimCity, I suppose, and Populous, but set in the Middle Ages. And it was a point and click system. You would sort of click on a map where you would want to build something, and then villagers would come in and out and move around. And it was so it was quite a complex game, really, in that you had to really carefully plan what you were going to do for your economy, and you'd have to organize your settlers or your villagers very meticulously to make sure you're making enough money. Then you would sort of build up your armies and you'd expand your territory. So lots of games sort of follow these guidelines and are similar to this, but this was the first game I'd ever played like this. And it's not actually a genre that I'm that into, really, apart from this and Age of Empires 2, which I have talked about before, one of my favorite games of all time. But for me, like you said with Crash Dummies, it was a game that I never got that far on, which this is very much the era of not getting very far in games, wasn't it? Because you often couldn't save games. They were rock hard. You didn't have the instructions. And also, I suppose you were like 8 years old, so you didn't have the,
Yeah, all that stacked against
abilities.
you.
Yeah, definitely. So I'd always get to pretty much exactly the same point where I'd built up some of my town and I got the villagers walking around and chopping wood and stuff, and then I wouldn't know how to get beyond that certain point, but it didn't stop me playing it. For In my mind, it was for years. I would come back to it like for a long time and never really get bored of it. And I suppose it comes down to the fact that I like the world building. I like building the town. I'm not that bothered about going to war. I mean, as you know, Stu, I'm a lover, not a fighter.
Of
So
course.
that comes across in my gaming as well. And yeah, it was another game we got from. I'm pretty sure we got it from the big car boot sale dodgy Amiga game collection. We had two big just cases basically of floppy disks with the game scrawled handwritten on the labels, no instructions. And I think this is where we initially got this game from. So I didn't have the manual, which is another thing I say that was stacked against me. And yeah, I've just picked it really because it was something that meant a lot to me. I suppose it was the first game I played for a long period of time on my own. So it was probably the birth of my solo gaming life, really. Like I obviously do play multiplayer games as well, and I love that. But I also do like to just get lost in the game on my own. And this was one of the first ones that I devoted a lot of time to. And it is, again, like we can't afford it. It's one of Amiga's most famous and well respected games. So it was a good opportunity to give it a mention and put it on my list.
So you're a lover, not a fighter, but you don't mind about video game piracy.
No, I'm a lover and a pirate, but not a fighter.
Crucially, not a fighter.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've surmised from your two choices so far is that you seem to like games or prefer games where there's a lot of planning involved and strategy involved.
Hmm. I think so. Well, I mean, I'm not really. I think maybe it's just in strategy games that I play occasionally. I prefer that side of things. And I'm now becoming aware that I sound like a hypocrite because I just said I'm a lover, not a fighter, but my first choice was cannon fodder, where where you literally have to kill people to complete the game. But yeah, there's just something about that. When it comes to a strategy game, I like just laying out my towns, my roads. I like the town planning side of it, I suppose.
You need to get over here one Sunday night and play Ticket to Ride with us.
Uh,
I think you'd be a good
I
addition to the group.
I love Ticket to Ride. It's my favorite board game.
Oh, maybe you shouldn't come and play with us then because you'll absolutely decimate it.
Right, what's your third and final choice then, Stu?
Well, in a pod first, I mean, I've done some sketchy things before, but I'm actually going for a game here which I've got no memory of playing whatsoever. I know I had it, but I don't have any memory of playing it. However, I do have strong memories of buying it and the immediate aftermath of buying it. So this is NBA Jam again for the Game Boy, which I picked up. I think it was boxed and had instructions, so it must have been a fairly decent second-hand purchase, nothing missing. But I had read in a magazine or heard from somebody in the playground that President Bill Clinton was an unlockable cheat character on NBA Jam.
Okay.
And then when I saw this game in whichever shop, I've got a feeling, I don't know why, but in my mind's eye, this is Bristol. Now, shopping trips to Bristol with my folks when I was young would have been very rare indeed. I can only remember one other, and that was when I got a knockoff Man United kit that had a badge that you actually had to sew on, which was my
Yeah.
first football kit, as I think we've discussed before. The
Mhm.
Man United thing didn't last very long, obviously. But I think this was Bristol. I was going to say maybe Glyn can correct me, but I'm not sure he can because this is such an obscure memory that only I will have. But I managed to find NBA Jam. Didn't have my Game Boy with me, so I was looking at the manual in the car, in the back of the car. I think it was the Mark II Fiesta,
Mhm.
Mark III Fiesta, no Mark II Fiesta, on the way home, and on the car radio. Now, hang on a second. If there was a car radio playing, it must have been the Cavalier, because a Fiesta didn't have a radio.
This is
So we're
amazing.
narrowing it down.
This is like watching someone crack a cold case before my very eyes.
Yeah, all of the red bits of string I've got on the wall here, you can't see, they're out of shot. So it must have been the Cavalier. But the song "Here's Where the Story Ends" by the Sundays was playing on the
Mhm.
radio,
Yeah.
if you remember that song.
Here's where the story ends.
And I just remember being sat in the back of my parents' car reading the instruction manual to NBA Jam, presumably trying to find out how I could unlock President Bill Clinton as a playable character. I had a look at it on YouTube again, doing some research before the episode, and I don't remember anything about the game whatsoever. I presume it must have been, as I was talking about with Pele, one of these sports games that I found quite difficult to get along with and actually do anything like score any points or anything like that, and I must have sort of put it aside quite quickly or maybe taken it and part exchanged it for something else. Um, so yeah, it's a very brief mention, but when I saw NBA Jam in the list of games that were released in 1993, I suddenly had that memory of that song playing and being on the way home reading the manual, and it had to go on the list just for that memory alone, even though I've got no recollection of actually playing the game. Is that fair, or do you want me to come up with something else?
No, I think that's fair because this podcast deals in memories. It is our currency. So
That's true.
that's in many ways better than doing what I did, which was just to list at length all the features of Cannon Fodder. And you've gone for just a pure personal memory. And yeah, anything that involves a Mark II Fiesta is fine by me.
I suppose maybe it actually did spark a later interest in basketball. Still like basketball today, still like watching the sport, keeping up with it. And one of the first things that Beth remembers about us in our early days is that I showed her some files that I had from a website that I'd made when I was like really just getting into website design, sort of early to mid 2000s. And I'd found them recently on my on an old hard drive or something. And when she was around one night, I was like, "Oh, look at this! Look at this website I made when I was young." I really swept her off her feet, as you can tell. And there was a page that I'd made about basketball, and it just had a load of like copy and pasted facts about different players and stuff. But there was a little blurb I'd written at the top saying, and this is a line that she quotes to me. She'll sort of paraphrase it and use it for different subjects when I'm going on and on about something. But the sentence I'd written was, if I remember it correctly, I like thinking about basketball. I like watching basketball. I'm just not very good at playing basketball. So if ever I've got some sort of new interest that I'm talking about, she will paraphrase and use that quote against me from from sort of 12 or 13-year-old me building his first website. So, but that's NBA Jam. That's where it all stemmed
Yeah.
from.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also where your love for Bill Clinton stems from, I guess, isn't it?
The very best president we ever had. I don't think there's anybody we're going to find on this podcast, listening to this podcast, who's going to go against me on that.
That's a very confident statement there to come out of the blue. But we might have to come back to that in a future episode when we do US presidents.
Well, he's certainly a bit better than the current president we've got, isn't he?
No satire.
No,
We have a no satire rule on this podcast.
Satire alarm. I do apologise. Okay, we're on the home stretch. That's my 3 choices for 93, for better or worse. Alex, round us off. What have you got coming up last?
The listeners will be devastated now. I've actually got 2 choices left, but I'm going to keep them both brief because neither game meant anywhere near as much to me as the previous 2. But the first one is Jurassic Park. And I wanted to talk about this just because it's an example of playing a computer game when you've loved a film and you're so desperate to sort of live that film or be part of it that you buy the computer game and it's like, how can I be part of this? And so I bought the Amiga version. And an interesting thing actually about the Jurassic Park game was that there were 2 different Jurassic Park games released by different studios in 1993, obviously to tie in with the film. One made by Ocean Software, and the other one was made by Blue Sky, which was for the Sega systems. And we obviously had the Ocean one, which was for the Amiga, and I think also the Nintendo. That's quite unusual, isn't it? I think for a franchise to license their product to 2 different like developers like that. You would never get that now, I don't think, where there'd be like 2, I don't know, Marvel games like made by different studios. I don't know, maybe they would, but it seems quite unusual. And yeah, as I say, we had the Amiga version, which was like a top-down sort of run and shoot game. Yeah, I just remember buying it in Bournemouth and buying it because I was like so excited about the idea of being able to be in Jurassic Park and have that thrill. Obviously, it didn't come anywhere near close to living up to that because it's quite rudimentary graphics as you'd expect from '93. But it was okay. Like I think the later Lost World game on PS1 was much better at that sort of stuff. So I just wanted to give it a shout out for that. And then the other game I wanted to mention was, I guess sometimes when we do these episodes, we choose a game that we didn't like. And that for me would be Mortal Kombat, which was obviously a massive game, a huge franchise. Was released, I think, in Japan and America in 92, but we didn't get it till 93, which is why I'm allowed to talk about it in this episode. I've always seen, as I'm sure most gamers have, Mortal Kombat as being a rival to Street Fighter 2. But then Mortal Kombat was the controversial one, wasn't it? I don't know if you ever played it. Did you ever play it?
Is this the one where you could like rip the guy's head off at the end and
exactly.
things like that? Yeah.
Infamous for its finishing moves, as I referenced in the intro with the fatality. That's what they would call them. So if you beat someone, I don't know what it would need to trigger it, but it would leave the opponent sort of dazed, and then it would say finish him. And then you could trigger your finishing move, your fatality, and it would be incredibly gruesome, like ripping someone's head off and pulling off with the spine intact, or knocking someone into a pit of spikes, and all these horrible things. And so the graphics were obviously really rudimentary. It's an old game, but even because they used this sort of digitized graphics thing where it looked a bit, I think it was like a really low res photo or something. The graphics of it looked different to other games. But I don't know if you've seen any of the new Mortal Kombat games where they still have the fatalities. You can see the clips on YouTube, but it's absolutely horrific. Like there's just it's really awful and not even like, yes, it's horrible. But
oh dear,
I've picked this because I just think this was a game that never really sat well with me. I think there was something kind of nasty about. I mean, obviously there's something nasty about it, but there was obviously something sort of, I don't know, emotionally nasty about it. Something I just never liked and always felt uncomfortable with. I'm talking about it really just to stick it in the 90s gaming bin, and also because it was so controversial, it needed to be talked about, I think.
We can certainly ask the listeners to weigh in on the Street Fighter versus Mortal Kombat debate, but I don't think it's going to generate nearly as much post as the fragrances did.
No, I think you're right. I think it's a bit too niche. Before we finish this chat on the games of 93, just a couple of bits of correspondence on this. Football Jonesy, new friend of the pod. Good to hear from you, Football Jonesy, and glad to welcome you aboard as a listener. They say, I'm sure there are many more, but Aladdin would be my choice. That game frustrated the hell out of me, but I just wouldn't give up. Good times. That was a big game in '93. Aladdin. Actually, we had that, and it was rock hard. Another game that we didn't get very far on. I know you can still buy it on various platforms, but yeah, good choice.
Games were much harder in the 90s. It's very, very true. And there was no way you could find out what to do if you needed to do something and didn't know.
Yeah, exactly. At best you'd hope that Amiga Power or whatever Nintendo equivalent magazine there was would have it in the cheats or the guides section at the back, but they couldn't have every game.
Our correspondent Things Found and Made gets in touch and says, great question. I don't know how you'll feel about the legitimacy of this choice, because straight away the two games that stuck out for me were Streets of Rage 2 and Road Rash 2. They came out at Christmas 1992, but they were the games of 93 for me. I think we can allow this, can't we?
I think so, yeah.
They both felt like they were proper next-gen stuff, like this was as good as it gets. Streets of Rage was like a beautifully roided double dragon, and in Road Rash I couldn't get over being able to ride a motorbike out in the wilds, whilst also smashing a fellow rider in the face, torso or shin with a wonderfully generous menagerie of weaponry. And they were really big co-op games, so I think that was a really big thing too. And then they go into a memory about playing Road Rash with their brother, but unfortunately the message cuts off halfway through. So, Things Found and Made, if you're listening, please do go back to your Instagram comment and finish that one off for us, and we'll read out the rest of that next time. But thanks so much for those memories. It's great of you to get in touch.
Absolutely, yeah. Unfortunately, some of your correspondence does get redacted by editor-in-chief Jeff, who sometimes he obviously pre-vets all of the correspondence that we get sent, and sometimes he does redact things. We don't know why, but we'll talk to him and see if he can do anything about that. But in the meantime, Things Found and Made do get in touch and send it again, and hopefully we can intercept it before Jeff gets his hands on it.
Well, why do you think we've not been allowed access to the email address for so long?
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. It's probably gone again. I added it, but he's probably taken it off again, hasn't he?
I shouldn't by now, yeah, what has it been, about an hour here? I should imagine so. Some alarm will have gone off somewhere in his office.
Well, that wraps up our Games of 1993 episode. Stu, I know that was a bit difficult for you because you were 5 years old when 1993 came around, so you did a valiant job there, I think.
Well, as I said at the top, I had to go with games that I came to afterwards. And as it turned out, it was a set of games that really stirred other memories within me around gaming and buying games. So I was quite happy to discuss those, and I just hope you enjoyed chatting about it with me.
Oh, absolutely. Of course I did. If you, the listener, have got any choices for your games of 1993, please remember that we only want games that were released in the UK in 1993, although we will allow, I suppose, Christmas games from 1992 at a push. But please do get in touch using the links that you can now find in our link tree, which is linked to below. And of course, you can let us know your thoughts on any other topic we've ever talked about, including fragrances. So go on the link and send us your messages.
Yes, please do keep your messages coming in. All of the correspondence we had on fragrances was very well appreciated by us all. We loved reading it out. And yeah, please do keep it coming in for us.
We're not sure what we're doing next time, which won't surprise anyone listening, but rest assured it will be yet more 90s nostalgia of the highest order. So stay tuned for that.
Well, I can try Diamond Joe Barter again, but it might be the Leslie Nielsen season at the Cineworld IMAX or something like that. So we'll have to check his diary.
Yes, we're definitely not his main priority, are we? He's made that quite clear.
He's got an unlimited Cineworld membership that he needs to make pay.
Well, whether Diamond Joe is there or not, we look forward to seeing all of you next time on the pod. And it just remains for me to say goodbye, thanks for listening. And I'm just off to perfect my finishing fatality.
And it's goodbye from me. See you next time. I'm just off to think about basketball and watch basketball, but maybe not play basketball.
Goodbye.
Ta-ta for now.
God, it feels like we've been recording for 45 minutes.
Oh my God.
We didn't even do what's the most 90s.
Oh.